Okay, here we go. This is the first in a three-part series of video updates. These are video weather briefings now, brought to you by Adisseo and Novak Weather. Again, we'll be doing three of these. First one is this one, of course, and then 2 months later, we'll be doing a second video briefing, bringing you up to date on what's going on in the United States with the growing season. And then, of course, we'll have a third one. We'll probably be talking somewhere in the later September time range, which will tie everything together with the growing season here in the United States. We'll be focusing mostly on what has happened, what's currently going on in the United States, especially east of the Rocky Mountains, where crops are being grown, and the growing season is extremely important, of course. So we'll focus a lot east of the Rockies, a little bit as you get to the West Coast, but and then we will try to touch at least on the future. But as everybody knows, it's real difficult predicting, 2-3 months into the future. So we won't get too much into that. But of course, we do try to give you a good idea of what's expected month to month with our 30-day outlooks. Okay, with that being said, let's just get right to it. And what you're seeing right now, this is the precipitation, total precipitation observed over the United States over the last 3 months. And a couple of things I want you to focus on. Now, this is the percent total, okay? And what I want you to focus on is look at what has happened here over the heart of Texas. So we're talking the Dallas-Fort Worth area, points on east through much of the deep south, and then continuing east and northeast into Pennsylvania and portions of the northeastern United States. These are areas that have received precipitation in excess of 100 to 150% of what they usually get over a 3-month period. So long story short, almost everywhere east of the Mississippi River, and of course here's the Mississippi, everywhere east of the Mississippi pretty much has been wet since the start of the year. Little dry up here in the northeastern U.S., some dry pockets, and definitely some dry areas here right along the Gulf Coast, and we'll get into that more later on. One other thing I wanted you to focus on is look how dry it has been lately, especially over the last 3 months. Over much of the central and northern plains, a couple of areas that have been wetter than usual, like in North Dakota here, southern Minnesota, but in general, a good chunk of the central and northern plains are starting to dry out, and that is going to be a bit of a problem, I think, as we go into the future. Here's the Drought Index Map issued by NOAA, and this shows you kind of what we were talking about. Here's this real dry area here in Colorado, northern New Mexico, even portions of Kansas. It's getting a little bit dry up here in the Dakotas, and then along the Gulf Coast, and this again is something that we need to focus on here. Look at the dryness. Kind of weird how it went from real wet in northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, much of Georgia, to all of a sudden dry over the Gulf Coast. And so they're having a bit of an issue down there. And of course, southern Texas has been really dry and hot lately. And I think that's going to continue too. Why is that? Well, just real quickly, let's take a look at the jet stream. Now, this is the GFS computer model guidance. And look at the jet stream as we go through time. This is the jet stream today, by the way, on Thursday here, or late this week. You can see a large storm system right here over much of the eastern United States. But as we go through time, and we're going to go through about the next 10 to 14 days, look at how the jet stream pattern kind of levels off. We don't have what's called a deep trough across the United States. In fact, our winds start to come from the west and northwest across much of the United States. It's a fast flow and often considered a dry flow. So as we get into the prediction over the next 30 days, you'll see I'm expecting a good chunk of the United States to be a little bit drier than usual. And that's certainly going to help a lot of the wet areas that have been plaguing much of the United States, especially east of the Mississippi River. This is the jet stream for mid-May, by the way. And look at it, it's a real fast west to east or west-northwest to east-southeast flow across the United States, which again leads to quick moving storm systems, not these deep storm systems that often will create significant precipitation. All right, so let's just take a quick look now at the 30-day forecast from Novak Weather. And you can see where I'm going with this. I'm expecting a jet stream to be coming out of the Western Canadian Rockies and then heading east and southeast into the United States. This will bring periodic bouts of cold air to much of the eastern United States, while a ridge builds up over the western United States during the month of May. And this ridge likely is going to produce some pretty hot weather from about Texas on north into Colorado and Wyoming and even into Montana. Hotter than usual, warmer than usual, and probably for the most part drier than usual. Here's a 30-day precipitation outlook for May. I do expect some precipitation to be above normal over portions of the Dakota and Montana. That's actually good news for those people up there. This area here in the southeastern and eastern United States is a bit of a question mark, but there is the potential for at least a little bit more precipitation than usual across the deep south and into the mid-Atlantic. But again, that's kind of questionable. What I do think is a lot more likely is that precipitation will be below normal up here in the Great Lakes. And it's going to be colder than normal up in the Great Lakes too. So the areas that are really wet up here in Michigan and Wisconsin, even further south into portions of the Corn Belt, good news for you, as I think we're going to get into more of a drying trend as we go through May. And then now here's one of the problems. Portions of Texas have been hot and dry, and I expect that trend to continue, especially as we get into the latter portions of May. Some of these areas in southern Texas are bone dry right now, and I don't expect that to change much here throughout May. In fact, that might be the case as we go through the summer. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And those that need precipitation along the Gulf Coast, I'm a little worried that it's not going to happen, especially as you get into Louisiana and Texas. Those areas seem to have a much better chance of being dry as we go through the 30-day period. Hopefully that changes as we get into the summer. And just one last graphic map for you. This is what I'm expecting. We've overlaid my expectations on top of the Drought Index Map. And again, here's that wet area over much of the southeastern United States and mid-Atlantic. I'm still expecting fairly wet conditions to continue into May. We are going to dry out, the way it appears, over much of the northern U.S., especially the Great Lakes area. And then I'm worried that drought conditions are going to increase from Texas heading on northwest into Colorado and Wyoming as we go not only into May, but then probably as we start getting into the summer months. All right, well, thank you for joining us here on this Adisseo and Novak weather briefing. I appreciate it. Again, you can expect another one in just a couple of months, so stay tuned.